Okay, so we would really like to welcome you, Norman and I, to this Indigenous Friends of Israel Zoom meeting that we have on a monthly basis. And we have a very special guest with us tonight, Ros Mendelle, who we'll introduce soon. But and also Norman, who's also very special. And the topic, as you know, is the aftermath of the recent federal election and how is that going to impact the Australian Jewish community and obviously their friends, and also how it's going to impact Australia's relationship with Israel. So I'm going to introduce Ros Mendelle. Now, Ros is the co-founder and co-director of the Queensland Jewish Collective and also Minority Impact. So over to Ros. Ros has asked that she do her Q&A after she speaks, because she's then going to need to go and do something else. So over to Ros.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Barbara and Norman. It's always such a pleasure to see you guys and work with you guys. Yeah, look, it's been an exciting couple of years, hasn't it? I
Mm-hmm.
was some of you here. Actually, I don't really recognize any of the names except for Rachel. So I'm Roz, I'm Israeli, now I'm Australian. I moved here 7 years ago. I met my partner, who's a woman, Hava Mendelle, over in Israel, and we came here together and we got married. We have two kids. We have very traditional values. We care a lot about not having terrorism around us. It's a minor, important detail. And before October 7th, 2023, I was just a marketing person doing marketing. And once the war ha started, and the world responded the way it responded, and then Australian politicians responded the way they responded, it kind of boosted me and Hava and a few other brave people, probably Rachel included, to start to want to take real action. And the first group that we formed was the Queensland Jewish Collective. But very quickly, we realized that it isn't only the Jewish people who are frightened and concerned and impacted. Very quickly, we realized that, of course, the Christian community is heavily impacted, but the Hindu community were reaching out and showing us their unique issues, and the Iranian refugee community were reaching out and showing us their unique issues. And we realized that what we're dealing with is a problem, a deep-rooted problem with radicalization that spans multiple cultures and multiple subgroups and isn't isolated to any one worldview or perspective. It's actually a really widespread issue. And we also saw that the Jewish perspective was becoming, um, to put it not gently, stomped on. And it almost got to the point where the word anti-Semitism, you barely say it, and people's eyes are already kind of rolling. It's like it became exhausting even for me to hear about anti-Semitism because you just heard about it all the time, everywhere you look, and it starts to get diluted. And we saw that when someone, from Iran would show their perspective, it was like it was shocking, it was surprising, it was different, and it would break that ice and it would break sort of a stigma and it would make people blink and kind of tune in again, you know? So we ran a really exciting campaign that was completely grassroots funded that, Barbara and Norman supported then as well for the Queensland state election. We raised $30,000 just from community members giving us, $100, $200. And we ran a campaign that's potentially the most aggressive campaigning that Queensland has ever seen, which we just said on billboards and on flyers, we said the Greens support terror. Now in Queensland, I don't know if any of you live in Queensland, well, in Brisbane area, but this was really, Rachel, of course, but this was really Greens' stronghold. We still have one. I still live in Ryan, which is the one Greens that is remaining after the federal election. Um, and we were just surrounded by their divisive and hateful rhetoric everywhere we looked. And it was really incredible to see after the Queensland election to see that our efforts had truly made an impact. And for the Queensland state, we were actually the only group campaigning like this. Um, Groups like Advance, which you may be familiar with, really big organizations, they actually, we were speaking to them, but they're actually unable to campaign in a state election at all. So they weren't even doing socials. They were doing nothing. We were like a lone voice in the void. Um, and so it really cut through and it was shocking and surprising and different. Um, I'll bring up a little presentation just to show you some images of what we did, and then I will just run through what we did for the federal election. And from there, I'll just take questions, and we can just have a bit of a discussion. And I will show you the wonderful part that Norman played in our federal election campaign. We pushed his face out across all of Australia, so that'll be a bit of a treat as well. So just one quick moment, I'll bring this up. Okay, so in that Queensland state election, can you all see my screen? Great. So as you can see, this was one billboard that we did in Brisbane. The Greens don't stand for us, Hindu, Jewish, and Iranian. And having those three faces together as this really strong alliance on one billboard was really, really unique and really exciting for those groups because actually those groups had been reaching out to the Jewish community for a really long time in many ways, and they weren't really getting that engagement back. Maybe someone would attend an event or, there'd be a handshake here and there, but there wasn't that real relationship building. And that's what we really wanted to do. An amusing anecdote is that our beautiful Hindu model, who you can see here in the middle, she was accused by our opposers that she was AI generated. But but I can confirm she is real. She was my coworker at the time, and she lives in Brisbane. So she is just that beautiful. What can we do? They're just gorgeous. Um, in the state election, we got some attention, and we actually stood at polling booths with a really exciting message where we had T-shirts that said, "Ask an Iranian Aussie how the Greens support terrorism." And honestly, I think that was probably the moment of glory in everything that we've ever done because watching people's faces when they interacted with these charismatic, incredible people and just they could not believe the stuff that was coming out of their mouth. It was the day that Israel had attacked Iran back last year. And the Iranians were just on this high. They were just so excited. They thought it was the end of the regime. And one of the Greens volunteers came up to Hessam, this tall, handsome bloke over here, and she said, "Did you know that Israel is attacking Iran?" Like it was her gotcha moment. And he looked at her and he said, "Yes, that's why I'm so happy." And her whole face, she just didn't, she could not comprehend this thing. And the reason for that is this issue has become so hyper focused. And again, of course, the Jews are the most vulnerable and harmed group here, but we are hyper focused on that group and not seeing how this is a really large global issue, and that serves the enemy when we hyper focus in that way. After the Queensland state election, we went on to really start to work a little closer with Advance only in the sense that we started to, attend events or speak to the other grassroots movements that were speaking to them. Advance sort of really encouraged us to get our message out even to other groups that we normally wouldn't mesh with. And we went out and we spoke at certain events. Our community of volunteers showed an interest in getting involved with the federal election. And so some of them did volunteer for Advance, and we decided to run a campaign against Labor for the federal election. With the concept of Labor let us down, the weak Labor government let us down. And we did that under minority impact. And at the end of the day, we also stood at polling booths here in Queensland. We opposed the Greens and stood at polling booths, protect minorities, put Greens last, which also was a concept that was so out of the blue for many of the volunteers there, because the Greens and their cohort really believe that they sort of own the volunteer. Sorry, my partner just told me that someone is trying to get into the meeting and isn't succeeding. So,
Okay, so we have a couple of people helping us there, Lillian Schmidt and
I
John
just sent
Greenway.
the meeting ID. That's okay. All good, all good. Um, One of the activities that we did for the campaign against labor is we distributed 200,000 flyers around the country into 5 to 7 key target areas. We targeted marginal labor seats. Looking now at the results, we can see that in areas like Gilmore in New South Wales, Parramatta, Chisholm, and McNamara and Blair in Queensland, we can see that in many of these electorates that we targeted, the swing to Labor was less than it was in 2022. And perhaps we may have had some impact on that and some part to play in that with our billboards and our ads and our flyers. And all in all, in the results of this federal election, we can see that the Labor government got something like 36% of the primary vote across the country. And a huge chunk, another 30-something% went to independents and another 30-something to Liberal, which really shows that Labor won, but by no means was it a landslide. And in fact, it's more that the Liberal government lost very badly. So it was not an enthusiastic swing to Labor. In fact, many electorates showed a swing away from Labor, but they still won on preferences due to a large number of independents giving their preferences to the Labor government. Yeah, we really loved working with all of our different minority groups. And we believe that the way forward is through productive and positive alliance building with our allies. And that includes, of course, the Hindus and the Iranians, but there are many other groups that would really love to build relationships with all of us. I've had outreach from the Filipino community. I've had outreach from Taiwanese community. I've had outreach from, obviously, Barbara and Norman are a unique example in the Indigenous community, which I think there's a lot more like them, but perhaps they're just quiet and anonymous. And I can even honestly say that we've had outreach from certain Muslim people and even one Palestinian individual who remains anonymous and has reached out in support of activities against radicalization, which, makes sense. There are maybe few, but there are moderates out there who genuinely just don't want to go down the path of what's happening in the Middle East. They don't want that here. And with that, I will sort of open up the room to anyone who wants to ask me any questions or see anything else that we've done. And hey, sorry, forgive me. First, I will show Norman's video. Just a moment. Let me just bring it up. This video was an example of one of the kind of videos that we produced for our campaign. This specific video had tens of thousands of views and playthroughs. People were really, really interested in what Norman had to say. And we wanted to produce things that were really like testimonials, like people's personal story that we just helped edit a little bit and make it presentable. And it was interesting that many of the negative comments were actually from within the Indigenous community or within sort of minority communities, calling us traitors or calling us, someone said Uncle Tom, using, very derogatory phrases even from overseas. And we thought it was interesting to see how the community moderated itself in the comments and were quick to attack those comments and really call them out for what they are. So it was definitely a contentious and interesting video to put out there.
Labor and the Greens have put
Are you able to hear that sound? Yeah.
Australia
Yes.
last. They have put up the price of electricity, food, housing and petrol and sent families and businesses bust. They have wrecked the economy. They have allowed pro-Hamas protesters to terrorise the Jewish community, control the streets and universities and make Australia unsafe for us all. The Albanese government is funding terrorism via UNRWA and vilifies the only democratic state in the Middle East, our ally Israel. A minority Labor Greens government will further rip up the fabric of Australia, put them last because they put you last.
Authorised by Josh Thirier of Minority Impact Coalition.
We geo-targeted this ad to hit Cairns and that whole Leichhardt area as well. I had some very interesting responses, so hopefully in some small way that helped Norman's sort of recognizability in his electorate as well. And with that, I will hand it to you all. I know many people joined potentially in the middle, but any questions about campaigning in elections? I'm here to answer. Don't
Yes,
try it
so-
at home.
I've got a
Okay.
question.
So
Yes.
hang on a moment. So
Oh,
look,
yes, Barbara.
just want to say thank you very much to Roz on behalf of Norman and I for sharing and appreciate again the wonderful work you've done. So we'll just ask you to put up your hand if you want to ask a question. I see Amanda Wright has her hand up. Over to Amanda. You can unmute.
No, if this, I don't know if this is a question that you want to deal with right now. But when I was in Cairns a few weeks ago, well, yeah, whenever it was, I saw this. I don't know if you can see it. Hang on, sorry. Anyway,
Sorry, hold it right up. What is it?
I just lost it. One sec. Sorry. It was a campaign poster for this guy, Jonathan Strauss,
Mm.
and it says, "Stop
Oh.
Israel's genocide." That was the lead sort of,
Build public housing and climate action now. The great umbrella.
So I said to the woman, there was a middle-aged, I don't know, older middle-aged woman sort of setting up the stall. And I said to her, because I was so shocked to see something like it was at Rusty's market, big market in Cairns, and they had a big stall there. And I was shocked to see that. Like the headline of their campaign was "Stop Israel's Genocide." And so I said to her, I thought about, I just didn't know how to react, and I knew I needed to say something. So I said to her, "How would you define genocide?" So she just looked at me because she wasn't expecting the question. She just looked at me and I said, "Would you say that if a population's numbers grow, would you call that a genocide?" She said, "No." I said, "What would you call that?" She said, "Expansion." I said, "Well, then, so Gaza's got an expansion of population. So why are you calling it a genocide?" And anyway, she got really, how they do. I can't discuss this with you. I said, "Well, you're promoting something here that's liable and lies and insightful and all the rest of it." But she didn't want a bar of it. She said, "I'm just here promoting the campaign," and basically walked away from me. And I just wanted to ask you, and it might not be an appropriate question for you right now, but when we come across this kind of thing, we don't have any training in how to react or respond or what sort of things to say. And even if you do say something like, in her own words, she acknowledged that it couldn't possibly be an expansion and a genocide. But then they don't. What do you do from there? Is what
Such a good question. It's the perfect question. I think I have three answers. Okay, so answer one is we have had a lot of requests from community for like toolbox answers for situations like this, and to do a bit of training around these sorts of interactions because the layers here are not only are you expected to like have, have information to just pull out of your sleeve, and kind of get past the stress and remember all your facts, right? That's hard in itself. But the other layer we're dealing with is a cult mentality and dogma. And when you're dealing with someone dogmatic, they're not in a listening mode. They don't want to learn from you. They are in the mode that they're in is to simply shut down any dissenting thought, tag you as whatever evil term they want to tag you, and move on. And it's very difficult to have any kind of conversation with someone like that. And some may say that it's pointless. We don't believe that it's necessarily pointless because even if the point is only for you to come out of that interaction feeling stronger and at least feeling like you have a spine, that means a lot because that makes us feel empowered. And that's really, really important. And at some point, you'll have an interaction with someone and they actually will turn out not to be as dogmatic as you thought. And if you have kind of the right interaction with them, you may make more of an impact than you realize. So we are going to work on certain toolboxes like that. And I'll be very happy to let you know when we have it. The other answer is that, people will always try to drag you to the overseas thing. Oh, let's right now mentally fly overseas and argue about what's happening all the way over there. But bottom line, the truth is that our own intelligence agency has come out and said that there is an over 50% chance of a mass casualty terror attack onshore right here in Australia over the next year. So, regardless of what someone thinks about how a war overseas is being handled, and we can argue about many wars, Yemen, Syria, we can argue about, South African farmers, we can argue about many, many, many different conflicts.
Yeah.
Bottom line, what is the division that is happening here? How are we demonizing each other here? How are we bringing that conflict here? And that's the core of the issue. And that is why we stood against the Greens. It's that extremist one-sided view. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, it makes sense.
Okay.
So I didn't quite
helpful.
give you the tools on the spot because I myself struggle with those interactions, but we want to develop some things to help, and I will let you know when we have them.
But I think that point you just made is asking the question, how does creating division against one group of people in Australia help us prevent terrorism in Australia? I mean, that's the bottom line, isn't it?
Yeah.
Take the Jew out the equation, kind of.
Okay,
Yeah.
so thanks for that. Can we have move
I
on
think
to the next person?
Rachel raised her hand before.
Rachel?
Sorry.
So we've got Rachel, then we've got John Aikens.
I just wanted to ask what you're planning for, like what next? I mean, you've given us a rundown of the results of all our hard work leading up to this election, but we've still got more work to do. Like Labor is now like, what have they got? 80% of the vote or 80% of the seats or some ludicrous amount. What are we going to do to make sure they can't get I know it's another whole 3 years away, but you know how quickly time flies. What kind of plans are we putting in place to prevent Labor from being re-elected? And I mean, truly, it also has a lot to do with what the Liberal Party does with regard to their leadership. I don't even know if they've got a new, it's like quite blurry to me.
Yeah. I think we've gone a little bit quiet, but we're not actually being quiet. We're having a lot of meetings with our legal team and our finance team in the background because we want to set up a plan to be active over these next 3 years, but in a slightly different format, because we really believe that the things that we did that had the strongest impact were the positive relationship building activities that we did, that basically, when done right, it makes political campaigning almost redundant. Because when you have groups of people who are united and they are knowledgeable and they are armed with tools and with communication and with clear vision, you come to an election season and everyone knows exactly how they're going to vote. Or better yet, people are empowered to actually participate in politics in a bigger way, like Norman did. And I think that if we can set up some structures and programs that enable us to, by the way, not only engage groups externally, but actually strengthen our own communities and have our own communities come out of our insular little box and take a genuine interest in those other communities and really understand them and see how they are related to us and how they are similar to us, we'll find that we'll be a lot stronger towards that next election season without necessarily having to like go banging on people's doors and saying, vote this way or vote that way.
Norman, will you run again?
3 years is a long time, and we just have to just wait and see what
It's going to keep us
develops
in
in that,
suspense, Rachel.
I think
in
we
that
should all
time.
run. I think there's a few of us right here in this meeting that should be running in the next election as independents.
All right. Who was next, John?
Over to John.
Are
And
you
then
muted,
we've got
John?
Sylvie. Thanks.
You're just muted, John.
John?
Sorry.
Unmute.
Potentially you can unmute him, Barbara.
Okay.
Is it John here?
No, he's up here and
Is it done?
There it is.
yeah,
There's
good.
John.
I've
Go.
tried.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, look, I'm interested because I have a lot of Hindus in my area. How do you reach out to them?
What's your area?
Parramatta. It's about 10-13%.
Man, Parramatta is a fantastic area. We campaigned so hard there, and the swing to Labour rose, but not because of the Hindu vote. It was really, well, some of the Hindu votes still went to Labour, but it was really because organizations like Muslim Votes Matter was really active there. There was wheeling and dealing in Parramatta. I can tell you some stories. Man, it was intense. So that's the best place in all of Australia to reach out to Hindus, actually. It is the number one. It has the highest Hindu population. And if you want direct contacts, I will connect you easily. But if it was something that you wanted to do independently, well, you have the headquarters of the Hindu Council of Australia there, which is the main sort of peak body for Hindus in Australia. Their president actually lives near Parramatta. And I'm sure he would love to have a really fantastic lunch with you.
That'd be great. I'm just a bit shy doing it because I'm sort of an unknown. But do you have some contact with them or?
Yeah. I'm happy to provide any kind of contact. We can talk after the meet. We can get connected, and I'm happy to have a chat with you and connect you wherever you want.
Okay, that's great.
We can help connect you.
Yeah.
Okay.
One more thing. There's a Dr. Abdel Fattah who wants to provide education for Palestine schools.
Yes, isn't she wonderful?
Yes. Now, I'll be like, I'm with Never Again is now, so we're going to protest this, write emails. I'm thinking, well, if they're going to do that, can we use this as an opportunity for this? Okay, if she says this, we can be there at the same time and give our side.
Yeah. Okay, so two-prong answer to that as well. Number one, there was an event recently in Brisbane, and there's going to be another one in Perth, where they had the gall to do an event called "Who Owns the Holy Land?" And all three people on the panel were people like Abdel Fattah. So it was pretty. It amazes me the confidence that these people have. And actually, about 7 or 8 community members and people from Never Again Is Now actually went to the event and represented and showed their faces and sat there proudly and didn't make a mess, didn't make noise, asked some questions, and were just there. And just the mere fact that they were there really shook it up. And it was great. I do think that it is good to start going into the spaces where we are excluded and be proud and calm and measured. And I think that makes a big impact, not just like the ragey, the protests and all this stuff, like they really expect that. They want that. They want us to act out and to make noise and make trouble. But when you just go and you participate, as is your right, it's pretty interesting. The only downside is the event was ticketed. And so we essentially donated some money to Hamas indirectly, probably.
Right.
But, oh
Is
well.
that a good way? What would your suggestion to respond to this person?
Yeah, well, the other side is so that's the reactive side, right? That's okay. We see this thing happening. We're going to react to it. We're going to send emails. We're going to go. We're going to attend.
Yeah.
But if we look at the proactive side, well, okay, so someone like, and it's a shame that we have to always be inspired by them, right? I wish that we would just first think of it ourselves. But okay, she's doing a free Zoom for education. How about some of our educators offer a free Zoom? And it's funny, the reason why it doesn't come naturally to us is because we don't have that arrogance. Oh yes, I'm now the expert on everything in the Middle East, and I will be the one to educate you. And we don't have that arrogance. And so it doesn't come naturally to us to offer things like that. But I think proactively we should. We should offer things. We should have sessions. We should have educational programs. We should, just put it out there with the same amazing confidence that they have. And, maybe someone signs up, maybe nobody does, but same as with them. I mean, we don't know if anyone's actually taken her up on her offer.
I know with Courage to Care, like they go with Holocaust survivors.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the issue of Palestine, they will avoid it. I've volunteered with them, and their advice is if someone brings it up, we'll say it's good you want to stick up for people. Just make sure that you're not damaging other people at the same time.
But also think about it this way, right? Like we can see from the results of the elections that Australia said no thank you to jihadism. Okay. We can see it. Okay, they Labor got another shot, but the sort of extremist jihadi ideology that the Greens were pushing got really rejected. It really got rejected. And so every time they do something like this and they put, Rema Naji is a Jordanian woman who calls herself Palestinian who ran here for the Greens in Moreton. She did very badly. Okay. Her whole platform was vote for Palestine. People don't want that here. It's why, people like Rennick are gathering following because people want Australia first. People want solutions for the here and now. So actually, let them dig their grave deeper. I mean, let them just put this stuff out there, put this hate out there, put this exclusionary rhetoric out there, and people are going to sniff it out. And so if we start thinking instead of always responding to something they're doing, what's something positive and productive that we can do? If it's Barbara and Norman's Holocaust education program, anti-Semitism education William Cooper education program, which is really amazing and unique. If it's something that you as John Aitkins, at whatever your information set is or your skill set is, or if you just want to really build an alliance there in Parramatta and start to get things going there and support each other's events, there's positive and productive things that we can do. And honestly, they hate it the most when we are simply living in our confidence, existing unashamed. It doesn't sound like much because we're so zoomed into the negative things that are happening.
Yes.
We start to build things of our own that will shine, just like this opposing side has spent 15 years building alliances with social justice movements. We do have some catching up to do, but we're awake now.
Yes.
We can do the work.
And,
I know, like with Anzacs, we had a billboard going around, just saying, the Aussie Jews fought for us, we should stand with them now. And there was pamphlet saying that every war they fought with us. That had a positive effect. I think JOI comes out with, Australian Jewish past, what contributions have been made. I think it's a very positive message.
Okay.
I think that's a very good thing to push.
Yeah, absolutely. I would certainly agree with that too. And just quickly, because we need to move on to Sylvie. She's had her hand up for a while. Wonderful questions there, John. We, as Indigenous Friends of Israel International, we also have an anti-Semitism in school project that we're working with Shoshana Linane, who's on the Zoom here with us. And so we've basically got grades 1 through to grade 6 just about ready to go. And part of that is a William Cooper children's book that Shoshana and I have written together, which is nearly ready to go as well. So we will be doing launches around Australia with that in the next few months. But Courage to Care, great anti-bullying campaign, and great work that Never Again is doing as well. Can we move over to Sylvie, because she's had her hand up for a while?
Great. Hello, everyone, and thank you. Ros, as an aside, I live in Melbourne and I live in the electorate of Goldstein. So you'd know you probably, I think you may know what's going on here with Tim Wilson, who really has won the seat with 240 votes, and yet Zoe Daniel Attil has gone to the AEC and there's going to be a partial recount. So, but what I was going to ask you was, and it's just slipped my mind, Yeah, I believe in the next federal election. It's going to be the independents and the minor parties, like the centre rights, that will hopefully step up and really push, and have a really good combined campaign to, basically down the, hold the balance of power, and.
Yeah. I think you're right. I don't really know, but I guess me personally, and there are people on our team and in our community who are really passionate specifically about elections. Me personally, this cyclic election cycle, one time this guy wins, one time that guy wins, one time. For me, I think we need to break out of viewing this election cycle thing, because if we just start building things that surpass that, we will see positive change regardless of who's elected. And I know that it's incredibly crucial right now because things are so polarized, right? So whoever's elected, it makes a huge difference right now. And we're watching the crumbling of the Liberal Party in front of our eyes. But if we can just build really positive, strong connections and do some really solid re-education, I think that things can, maybe it's idealistic, but things can start to become less polarized. We can rehumanize each other. And then election seasons, as cyclic as they are, won't necessarily be as life or death. Yeah, so on one hand, that's not really the answer for what you're saying, but it's easy to get trapped into that cyclic thing. You know what I mean?
Okay,
Not
thanks
quite.
very much. How is that for you, Sylvie? Does that?
Yeah, well, not quite, but
Not quite.
no, I just believe, the upper house, the Senate, makes the final decisions. At the moment, Labor holds 92 seats.
Yeah.
For goodness sake, 92 seats. How are they ever,
No, it's huge. It's really a dangerous time right now.
Oh, and I just see it that, with the independence and hopefully everybody getting on board together and with your, you know,
I think that
minority.
another way, though, that working from the ground up has an impact, though, is when they start to perceive you as a significant force that can actually harm their voting, their votes.
I completely agree with you, Roz. And here in Victoria, we've got a state election November next year. And hopefully, what I'm praying for is there'll be a snowballing, say something continuing from, well, put the Greens last, which was quite successful here in Victoria, building up towards a state election for next year. And
Yes. And
running.
I think J United did a great job in Melbourne too. And
Fantastic
do you
job, yeah.
think we can pass on now to Sarah, who's got a question for you, Roz?
Hi, I'm Sarah. I live up
Hi.
in North Queensland. I'm sorry I was a little bit late to the party. I only finished my call a bit late. So I'm calling in from Wulgarukaba country at the moment,
Wow.
and looking out to Bindle from my balcony. Um, Look, I come from a long line of Bundist Jews, and traditionally I always would have been a left-wing voter, and I would have voted to the left on most issues. And I think the hardest thing for me at the last election was there was nobody who I felt I could vote for at all, and I ended up voting as a Jew. But certainly here in North Queensland, it hasn't really penetrated so badly here in terms of anti-Semitism. We've been reasonably protected by being a garrison town and by having probably one of the strongest Liberal candidatures in the country. I think Phil Thompson only extended his majority. So there's that. But how do we go about recapturing the left? Because the things that were special to me about Israel from a Holocaust family and as I said, from a long line of Bolshi sort of Bundist traditionalists and was, the idea of Mushavim and of kibbutz and like sort of that more collective leftist principle. And I don't know how we recapture that spirit to bring the left back in again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really hard. It's, I think that the first step in that process is identifying that what we're dealing with is a plague of radicalization, which means that ideologies are going into that really extreme point of extremist, one-sided views, extremely polarized, extremely dogmatic, and exclusionary. So they shut themselves off and they go into a silo. And what we have now is this sort of tagged and bagged society where the minute you let one word out of your mouth, people are like, you're this, and I'm not going to speak to you, or I am going to speak to you. And we're extremely divided. And the only way to start to come back to a place of balance, and when I say balance, it means that you and I can have a really healthy conversation in which we argue certain points of classic liberalism versus Moshav kibbutz lifestyle. And then, our policy standpoint would kind of be somewhere in the middle, somewhere healthy and rational, right? That's what we want in our democracies, right? That's why we have multiple parties, because we want there to be healthy, heated debate, and rationality and sort of a flow between different ways of viewing the world. The only way to come back to that is if we rehumanize each other. And I know that obviously, first of all, good to hear about far north Queensland, because me and my partner fantasize about moving there often. So we're so stressed out in Brisbane now. But the only way to reach that point is to not fall into the bag and tag mentality ourselves, to keep reaching out, to keep humanizing each other, to build alliances with the groups that are already right there, marginalized, and kind of have this lived experience that may be parallel to ours, if that's Hindus, if that's Yazidis, if that's other marginalized Middle Eastern communities like Coptics, to really start to build bonds, because we're all sitting in a little silo and we're also separate from each other. But and the ones that are reaching out to us actively, like the Iranians are just such a great example, because they're banging down our door to communicate with us. And if we start to work with people like them, they have an in to that other side. We don't anymore right now. We just don't, but they still do. They're browner, they're more Arab, and they have an in to that more left side where they can shake things up and kind of get that moment of breakthrough, like in that the movie with Ryan Gosling and that movie, the love the movie that makes me cry every time, and at the end, and she has Alzheimer's, and then she breaks
The
through and
Notebook?
remembers him.
The Notebook?
You see, I've
thought
been
you were-
dealing with politics
I thought you were
for too long.
talking about the
I remember
Barbie movie.
basic. I haven't watched a movie in so long. I can't even tell you guys. But yeah, the freaking Notebook, where she breaks through and she has like a moment of being awake, and you see this moment happen when you're standing with like one of these Iranians or one of these Hindus, and someone from this left thing comes to talk to you. It's like they like blink 3 times and they're suddenly more with you than they were before for a moment, just because of who the information is coming from. Because we are so polarized now. And it, in my workplace, as I was leading up to start campaigning, I had someone, I was working quite closely with him, and he's a very strong Green supporter. And he had this cognitive dissonance where he couldn't deal with like who he knew I was, like a kind, nice, easy to deal with person, and like the genociding Jew Nazi that he has in his brain. He literally couldn't bridge the two. He couldn't even manage it. And it didn't matter what I said. I was either stupid or ignorant or bad. There was no, it didn't matter what I said. So we have to just start doing a bit more teamwork here with people who are not in this forced boxing rink that we've been forced into, and open it up. Just open up the conversation, bring in marginalized voices that are not commonly heard. And that's really hard to do. So good luck.
Wonderful answer. How was that for you, Sarah?
Look, I can't, I went to Sydney Uni and to University of Queensland, so it's been an odd where I was quite a lefty person, and so it's been quite an odd experience to be an alumna of 2 campuses where I would no longer feel safe walking. And so I understand what you're saying, and it's really been very sad up here that the main sort of rearing of anti-Semitic sentiment has come from university students at the university here, or from performers coming from down south. So Xavier Rudd did quite a big speech at his performance up here for the NAFA festival.
Yeah.
So, all that sort of media and all that community that I normally would have lent into, I'm suddenly not so safe or welcome to be around. So it feels sad, because I also feel that these are the people who, if we'd really managed to get the centre left involved at all, I think most of us would be feeling a lot safer and a lot more involved in the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, again, what we're seeing is a process of radicalization. So you're taking things that it used to be a spectrum, and now it's a boxing rink. So the spectrum doesn't exist as much anymore. And so people like you, or people like me, a gay progressive Jew who also, doesn't really mind capitalism that much, is, like, I don't belong anywhere either. It's like the far sort of more conservative groups that I that I work with and respect, it's like I'm a shock to their system as well. So it's it's definitely yeah, it's definitely tricky. But if we keep being outliers and keep just really championing the fact that no, we're not going to fit into your box, and our views are not going to become black and white just because everybody else's seem to be. That's the only way. And I know that's not really, you are in an impossible situation. And many of the donors who donated to our campaign would never have donated to our campaign in the past. I had people, families that are established families who have donated millions to climate initiatives. They would never have touched the Liberal Party 10-foot pole, and they found themselves indirectly supporting the Liberal Party in this election because they felt really trapped. So it is a hard situation.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've observed in this election is that there were so many Jewish people in Australia who see themselves as progressives and are very keen about social justice and social responsibility, who have traditionally voted for the Labor Party, but have felt very left out, sold out, and disappointed with the government's
Yeah.
dealing with anti-Semitism and even fanning the flames of anti-Semitism in Australia. And so to make that shift to vote differently is a huge call. It's really an identity crisis in many ways. I know from personal experience, I have been a champion, you might say, of Aboriginal rights for 50 years, and yet I've had to re-examine a lot of my approaches as well. So I think it's been a real time for the Jewish community in Australia. Speaking as someone who's not Jewish, but just as I observe, um, a real identity
Yeah.
crisis and a real reckoning of, well, that's how I've always voted. How can I change? It's the real challenge.
One thing that happens when a person is rejected in a psychological sense is that you stop trying because you anticipate rejection. Because rejection really hurts. It really hurts, no matter who it's from. And you become really, really apprehensive. Like even me, if I'm, going to the doctor or going to a beautician or whatever, or getting my brows done, I'm really apprehensive about what this person's thoughts are, what their ethnicity is. I ask them a lot of questions, and I'm almost like stressed, like I'm going to be rejected in this interaction or mistreated. But we have to overcome that blocker, and we can't let that stop us, because if we refuse to fit into a box and we keep being open and vulnerable and real and authentic, it does affect people. It does. They go home and you've planted a seed of doubt in their view. And it is there's, I wish there was something I could say like, oh, you can just do this and the, solution. There is no big solution right now. We are in a lot of trouble. But we have to just keep at it and stay real and stay brave and vocal.
Wonderful. I know that we have gone longer than expected, Ros.
Yeah, it's okay. Maybe
are
two
you
more
able
questions
to
and
have,
then we'll call it.
okay, great. Is there someone else who would like to ask a question?
Is that Delwyn masquerading as me?
Oh, am I? Oh, sorry. I don't know how that happened.
It's okay.
We've got Paul raising his hand. Okay, would you like to unmute Paul and ask your question?
Thank you. And I had some technical issues, so I missed the first part of the meeting. So if this has been covered, my apologies to raise it again. But a little while ago, I had expressed a thought about things we can do between now and 3 years' time, or 2.5 years' time, when we get to the next federal election. and that is that we have a Senate that is dominated by Green and Labor, and that having the Green senators with Larissa clearly taking up the same position that a predecessor had. So it doesn't seem like there's any decency coming from there, any sort of quarter given to us. And then we have the very, very left Labor Party, who are in have most of the major positions now in government as well. So my thought at the time was, what can we do on the way through that we could maybe action younger people, like some of the youth groups that most of the small organizations like Jewish community and Hindu community, I presume, a lot would have young groups. And so my thought at the time was to monitor, have a group of people monitoring each of the, say, 11, say 15 senators who at the end of the day will make the decisions on legislation, and that we just break down those people into groups, monitor what they're saying relevant to the things that would affect anti-Semitism and anti-Israel sentiment. And as they get blocked, the next person takes over and becomes the one. Of course, so we've got the Senate, so we only have a handful of people we need to push back on in reality, in my view. And of course, then the other issue that is harder is ABC, that seem to have taken on another life in interviewing criminal terrorists that have come out of jail, and then quickly picking up that a family's been wiped out, but it's now been found that family was wiped out some months ago, and not just immediately, but of course any retraction, which they normally don't do, it's all over. So I think that it would be good on a national level to be able to have some sort of system where, as groups of people who are more technical savvy than I am, could get together and do something and push back. And I also think that, although I agree with what Ros is saying with the minority and smaller ethnic groups and cultural groups in Australia, I do think that more work needs to be done to have better relationships with our national bodies. And again, in the Jewish community, you've got the ECAJ, Executive Council of Australian Jewry, whose job it is to deal with national matters. Zionist Federation Australia, a bit more Israel-based, but again, they deal on federal levels. And the Hindu Council of Australia, they were quite forthright in the early stage. So I think that not only do we need to be dealing with smaller minority groups, but we actually need to know and have relationships with their national leadership, so that we're not all doing the same thing, or we may bring different ideas to their more traditional ways of dealing with things. So it's kind of my question is, can we give more thought to how we can actually do things that might be just little things that could make a difference, and put the pressure back on the senators when they make stupid statements in our mind. That there's actually, of course, and many of us would know about the Shield of Israel, and they work internationally about these things. So that's kind of where I'd like to, sort of have a further discussion and see where there's potential for that.
I think that anyone who wants to take action in this space here today and has certain skills, they know, you can write a good letter, or that you are on social media a lot and you're just monitoring and taking screenshots, or you're someone who really loves the face-to-face and engaging with interesting cultural interactions. Whatever your skill is and you want to give your free time to do it, there's a lot of organizations that would be very happy to utilize you. Never Again Is Now is one of them. We are another one. And I'm sure that if you wanted to do something that is more along that sort of political advocacy line, like Paul says, the big peak organizations are, they're meeting with the politicians every single day. And I'm sure they love feedback and assistance. So I guess, in terms of what kind of frameworks can we put in place, like you said, Paul, there's many groups doing many different things with their own approach. I guess it's up to us as individuals to assess the time we have, the skills we have, and where we feel a pull, a magnetic pull, and we feel like we might find a place where we belong. I will say, Sarah, that specifically to you, our first campaign, one of our slogans was we used to vote Greens, but now they're too extreme. Because actually, one of the reasons why I decided to do a campaign against the Greens was because an Israeli women's group here in Brisbane, we had a WhatsApp group, and I could just feel their pain because they voted the Greens in. They are progressive women who care a lot about, climate change. It's a huge issue for them, and they really put their faith in the Greens. And, mistakenly or not, they later regretted that decision and felt really betrayed. And yeah, so all of us here, you're here sitting in this Zoom for a reason. You're searching for somewhere to either find that sort of companionship and understanding or somewhere to use your skills. And by all means, if you want to use skills, we could use them. I'm sure Paul can use them. I'm sure Barbara can use them for her programs. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. So perhaps we will leave it at that for now. It's been absolutely awesome.
Thank you so much. My contact details are in the chat. Again, you got skills, we're happy to use them. Or you can speak to Paul. Paul is really active in the State Zionist Council here in Brisbane, or Never Again Is Now. There's so many ways to use skills. Barbara and Norman, they have this amazing project. They need all the help they can get. I recommend, just throwing your weight behind them. And yeah, I'll hand the mic over to Norman, and I will have to watch the recording later.
Okay. We'll
Thanks,
give you a
guys.
clap, hey?
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so very
Thanks, Roz.
much.
Thank
Much
you. Have a good night.
appreciated.
Oh,
Thank you.
Shalom.
all right, bye. Bye.
Yeah,
Shalom. So over to Norman now.
Know yourself.
Oh. Oh, look, I'm only just Norman just wants me to just speak for a moment. Can you see me okay? All right, because I'm actually looking at Rachel, so I'm not quite sure how that happened, but look, anyway, you've got a beautiful face, Rachel, so it's lovely to be looking at you. Look, I think one of the reasons this election was just so very, very important was that anti-Semitism was an election issue. And it was part of the platform, actually, of Norman. It was really the main reason he stood, was because he wanted to bring more notice to that whole area of anti-Semitism. And we've been putting out press releases for quite some years now regarding anti-Semitism as part of Indigenous Friends of Israel International. So he wanted to make even more of an impact through standing. And also, as you saw from that video, he wanted to, and we've made a similar one ourselves, he wanted to really stop having a Labor Greens government, because it looked like that was what was going to happen, because it would be a Labor minority government. As you know, it turned out very differently from that. But look, one of the major concerns that we have, and I'll only be very quick so that I see the time is running on and Norman needs some time here. One of the concerns we have is that anti-Semitism is going to rise now that the Labor government has got back with so many seats, even though they only got 34%. We are concerned. You saw what happened in Washington, D.C. very recently. You know the story of the Adass Israel synagogue in Melbourne that was burnt, the caravan in Durrell near Sydney. So the possibility of a mass casualty event in Australia, I'm afraid, is increasing under this current government. So we really need to be activated. We really need to speak out. We really need to be organised. Wonderful message by Ros there and what their group is doing and other groups are as well. And we need to build more alliances between the groups that are working on these issues. Just a couple of things that we're doing is the Anti-Semitism in School project, and also the William Cooper book, children's book, as part of that for grade 3, 4. Also, I have a Holocaust and Anti-Semitism education handbook for adults as well. That really needs to get used. We plan to do a book launch and launch of the Anti-Semitism project around Australia. Obviously need the finance to be able to do that, but we want to do that in the next few months. But our concern is that there were 15 recommendations given by Alex Rivkin from ECAJ at the Sky Anti-Semitism Summit in February in Sydney. We were there for that. Those 15 recommendations, whether you like Peter Dutton or not, is irrelevant, or whether you like the Liberal Party or not is irrelevant. But the thing is, he signed up to the whole 15, and the Albanese government has rejected all of them. Now, that is really critical because we're still going to have problems with encampments at universities. They tried to set one up just a few days ago at Melbourne University. We're still going to have issues with safety at Jewish schools and places of work. We're still going to have issues with police letting people off. The attack on Dutton during the election, that person was just given community service. The police in Victoria have recently not made charges against people who have attacked Jews. I can go on, but I won't go on. But I'm saying our big concern is that anti-Semitism is going to rise under this government. So it's very crucial that we speak out, that we mobilise, that we create alliances, and work towards it. And one of the things I think it was actually John brought up before about the Anzacs. One of the things that we would like to see also is having some better education in school about the alliance between Australia and Israel built through the Anzacs, because we have a Teachers for Palestine group that is actually teaching false Australian and Anzac history and false Israeli and Palestinian history. But I'm going to hand over to Norman, and because our time's moving on, and I'm sure he would love to speak to you. Over to Norman.
Well, thank you for all those that are on a very important calendar day for the people of Israel, Yom Jerusalem, and we know that it began on the Sunday, the 25th of May, and right up to the nightfall, Monday, 26th of May. And we know that it was Yom Jerusalem, commemorating the reunification of Jerusalem and the establishing of Israel control over the old city in June in 1967. The other anniversary that I would like to bring to your attention is the commemoration of the Sorry Day, the anniversary in 1998, 26th of May. And so that's also an important day on Australia's calendar. But importantly, one of the questions that I've been asking and still asking myself after the election, and let me just say that I will continually stand strong, and not only for Australia, but for the people of Israel, the Jewish people, that we are so blessed in our nation. And the many connections and the relationships that we have, not only within our own city of Cairns. Leichhardt was a very big election to campaign in, but it was like a David and Goliath battle, and I know many of you know that story very, very well. But importantly, that there was a group that I had to be able to stand. Importantly, my wife and family and friends like yourself. As Barbara mentioned, that the campaign that I stood for was as an independent, that campaigning against anti-Semitism. So I made that very, very strong. There was confrontations that I had within this campaign over the time. But one of the things that I had, even though for the election, that we constantly got press release and that through our local paper did not pick up some of those press releases, which were pretty hot off the topic, and they related to many, many things, but importantly on Israel and against, the stand of anti-Semitism. So, I really believed for myself that it was a stand that I needed to make and will continually make. But what's happened, and it's a question that I'm still asking myself, what's happened in the fabric of our nation, this Australia that I love, and a place where a place that I love and cherish and deeply in my heart. But to see the way things have been going, but to see the way that a government that's just been, and the paper has said that it was a landslide, and we know there's probably about 84 seats that was won, but also 90 something, Barbara was saying, and I missed the count. So they say still counting, but very, very concerning that we still got a number of Greens. I believe that there's still 11. So I want to thank Rosin for the campaign that she has run and the team that she was able to have to be able to counter some of those seats. But as I said, it's for myself. It's very concerning, and they say like democracy. That was one of the reasons I also wanted to stand and have my voice heard. But unfortunately, in times like this, that money buys democracy, and that's what happened. And to the amount of time that I had put in, but also finances, was very, very limited. But in saying that, I needed to make sure that whatever I did was to give my very, very best. And I put my best feet forward, and I will continue to do that. And so I want to remind many people on this, especially the Jewish people, that when Barbara and I set up the Indigenous Friends of Israel, we are your friends. We are your friends forever. And I want you to personally know that even though I'm here in Cairns, that I'm your brother, that you can call any time, day or night. When you're coming up, I hope you come and visit. There's many friends that are on here tonight that have, that I know personally and that have been to the city of where I live. I would have liked the situation to be a lot better. We know we have a Labor candidate that's won this seat since 2000 and 2008. Sorry, no, it's not 2008. It was Warren Inch was the MP for the Liberal Party for 26 years. So that's how long he held the seat. And he decided not to stand, and so that seat now has gone into Labor hands. And as you would know, that the deal that Labor had given to the Greens, but also another party, whether you probably heard of it, was the Cannabis Party. And so that's where all their preferences was given to the Greens. and the Cannabis Party. That's where Labor had the numbers. Leichhardt being a very, very large seat, I think there was something like 46 electorates, polling booths in that. And so we were only able to do 10 of that. So that just gives you the amount of how big this election is. And it does have quite a few of, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that live in those areas, but also many of them that have always been Labor supporters. And that's been traditionally that grandmothers or grandfathers or great-great-grandparents voted that way, so they continually vote that way. My concerns is that this government, as Barbara mentioned, of not taking up the 15 statements that was endorsed by the summit, the anti-Semitism summit that we were there at. And so I took those 15 also into my election. My concern is that this government, and not only that, but also the member now for the seat of Leichhardt, I'm not sure where he is actually at, but I know Warren Entsch worked very, very closely with the Israeli ambassador in Canberra, and has been a committed friend, and I think that's something that's been of encouragement over the many years. But now in a situation, I'm I need to really obviously pray into a direction of how to be able to overcome of what we are seeing, what's right before us. And so those concerns that, as Barbara and I have, is the continually rise of anti-Semitism. But I want to just say to you that, I do believe in that there seeds of hope and other good outcomes, but it's going to take a requirement of not only myself and Barbara, but to the wider Australia, and especially to friends that I know, but also Christian friends that I know in this nation that needs to make strong and committed and dedicated stands than what we have. I'm starting to hear the sound of the left, 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 and that's what we have. We have a government that's been, we know the Albanese of his ways and how he started off with that Palestine movement and other things, and friends of. We also see that what the Greens have done and what they will continually do. No friends of Israel, and as well as the Labor Party. But also I'm concerned of the change that's in the Liberal Party, of this change of Suzanne Lee. I hope and pray that that she'll have, and I know that she has addressed it, where there has been a change of heart, where there has been statements, and it's right there. I mean, you can go and search that she did have that support for Palestine, but obviously her time that she's given strong support in a way, if I could say that, and at least visited Israel. But we need people like yourselves too, and those that are in Canberra, especially friends that I know, but Christian churches in Canberra, to make those strong stands, and the Jewish community, importantly, to make those stands and somehow really build up those relationships and those support to those that we know that have a long-standing and support, not only for our nation, but importantly for the Jewish community. There's certainly those dangers that I'm unfortunately seeing a lot of signs, and it's like those red flags. And I know for even a time, me even saying this, that right now in Israel, there would be the prayers, there would be the ceremonies, there would be
the educational of events, but also there would be those parades that they would just dance with their flags. And you know, I I wish that there could be those dancings and rejoicing on our streets even right now. But to the point there that you know there is nastiness, there is that evilness that's around. But you know, I want to just say that to my friends that are on here, to my Israeli friends, to my friends, new friends that I've found through my time of Barbara and I setting up the Indigenous Friends of Israel. As you know, we've been to Israel personally ourselves 12 times, and we will continually not only stand with the Jewish people in our nation, but to stand with the Jewish people in Israel and Jerusalem. And so I want you to know that whatever it's going to take, whatever things that's going through my mind right now, there's part of me just wished I could just like jump on the plane and just to be able to go and not only visit all my friends that are in Sydney and Melbourne, Jewish friends, as I visit our local community here, which I hope to make that contact up with in the next Shavuot for Shavuot coming up very, very soon. A very small, you know, Barbara and I are connected up with in our local city here, and the support that they've given me when they found out that was standing. I remember going to the rabbi's house and I needed 100 signatures before I even made a start of this election. And I also had to come up with, as you know, the $2,000 before I even started the election. But I remember going into the rabbi's house and he says, look, how many signatures do you need? I said, I need 100 signatures. He said, well, come on, bring the paper into the house and we'll go ahead and sign them. Barbara and I are looking at very closely in the next Zoom that we have, and I hope many of you will be around in the time that we work the date time of our next Zoom. But we want to look at it as a time of work like a workshop, and I think Rosalind's brought many good things there for us there tonight. But there's many of you that's on tonight very skilled and very gifted in what you do. And I think that if we can come together, united in that united way and really really address this, as I said, we've got 3 years now. I don't know the direction of how I would go, and certainly would take a lot of prayer time. But I know that I want to, I would love to be able to ring Josh Frydenberg, for instance, and say, hey, Josh, and I'm sure,
We're here to help.
I'm sure that if he would have made another stand, I'm sure that he would have won that seat without in Melbourne recently. And so I hope I just want you to know that the next workshop, as I said, that we have that we can be in touch. So I personally and Barbara want to thank you for being on here, and Roz, and if you have any questions, I know it's after that time, but if you have a few things that you would like to ask, please do.
I just have to say, Barbara, Ross asked me to give you a message. She's in the waiting room, waiting for you to join her back into the call.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Lovely.
Okay.
Hi, Ross, you're back again.
Hi, Ross.
I've just hopped back in.
Hi, how are you? Good to have you back. Okay, so just anyone got any questions for Norman?
Norm,
Yes,
do you
like
want to
Sylvie?
repeat in a nutshell what was that last thing you were talking about, just for Roz's sake?
Oh, Roz, I've just mentioned that you had quite a few little
Oh, that's
little
okay,
gold
guys.
nuggets there that you bought when you were sharing, and those tools. And I think that many on here tonight are very gifted and very, very skilled. And I think that what an opportune time for where Barbara and I had been talking about the next Zoom meeting we would have. And certainly we would love to invite you back for that workshop on where to from here, as if to say. And I think that with the collaboration, that united uh, front that we will make, and I think that we can all make a difference of the input. So that's something that I just wanted to bring forward and just see the number of people on here tonight who would attend something they like that in the next workshop that we have, and have the input. Just a show of hands, who would certainly like to be on board for that. I can see
Okay,
several.
we've got a few people
I can
in
see several
the
hands.
That's lovely.
So between Barbara and myself, we'll put a timeline on the next Zoom that we will have. But as I said, we will base it on the workshop and where we need to take it from here, because like I said, it's just got to the time of very the seriousness of things. David.
Hang on. No, we had Sylvie first. If you're not asking a question, can you put your hand down? So David is asking a question. Sylvie first, and then Shoshana, and then David. I'd love to see you, David and Carol.
Right. I actually don't have a question. I just want to thank you, Norman and Barbara. I mean, Norman, you spoke so passionately and from your heart. And so, yeah, just bless you for the work of your hands and your heart, the two of you. It's so appreciated.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for that.
Much appreciated.
So, Shoshana?
Yes, I just wanted to echo Sylvie's comments too. The same. I was just so impressed, Norman, with the little resources that you had. I so enjoyed every one of your posts on social media about what you were standing for was very clearly articulated, and both to you and to Barbara. Yeah, certainly was praying for you and cheering you on, and I think that it's just the beginning. It's just the beginning. I wanted to thank Ros for this evening too. And for me, I was just really thinking a lot about that fact that Ros was saying about the unity, the bonding, the relationship building. And you were talking, Norman, about the sowing of seeds. And for me, absolutely, it's about using our gifts and our abilities to be able to continue to press forward against this anti-Semitism agenda. But it really also highlighted to me both your comments, the importance of making the most of intentional conversations with people. Those informal chats where people will just bring up something they've seen on social media, and really I see them now as a gold nugget opportunity now every time to be sowing the seeds of the importance of respect and championing the Jewish people and any minority group, actually, to be honest with you. I mean, as an educator and a teacher, I face it a lot in schools, but outside that, I'm also facing it more and more. And I just thank you for that important reminder that that's a part of building relationships with people, is that when they leave that conversation from us, that has sown a seed in them of the importance of standing together, as Ros so well put about humanizing. We're humans together in this. And so thank you very much to all of you that shared this evening.
Thanks, Shoshana. And Shoshana is the one that's our curriculum writer for Indigenous Friends of Israel International, and she's doing an awesome job. And we've co-written the William Cooper children's book together, which is going along so well, and I think it's going to touch many children's hearts. So thank you, David and Carol.
Thanks, Shoshana.
Yes.
Got a
thank
question,
you.
a comment?
What a lovely background.
What's that? Oh, it's
I
Damascus
love
Gate.
it.
Yeah. 2017. Yes, look, thank you, Norman and Barbara, for this time, and especially Norman for this campaign that you've done. We really haven't thanked you enough for standing, and it's when you've got so much that wants to come against you at every turn, at every street corner, it's that's quite a battle. So I hope you're able to rest and recover through this period, both of you, and to stand and fight again another day. And so I thank you for the focus of this time tonight, and especially those who are already active in this area. In the run up to, or the 6th of December last year, which was the anniversary of William Cooper doing his march in Melbourne to stand up against the Nazis in support of the Jewish people of Germany. We worked together. Barbara was involved with that. And Mike Carroll here was involved with that at the Melbourne, but a bunch of us were also at the embassy, the Israeli embassy. And I don't know how many of you know about this in Canberra. The ambassador has discovered through Barbara mainly and her books the significance of William Cooper standing for the Jewish people. He was born in 1860, and when he didn't have any rights, even in 1938, he didn't have any rights pretty much as a person, let alone as a citizen of the new colony, you might say. So it was just amazing to find that he announced that he has created a plaque on the border fence between, he shares a boundary with the German embassy. So he gets on really well with the German ambassador in Canberra. And so he created a plaque there to honour William Cooper, which was unveiled on the 6th of December last year. I mean, this is just a symbol of a little bit of activity. I mean, on Barbara's behalf, she's written 3 books on William Cooper. So there's an immense amount of work that she's put in behind this story. And William Cooper is now honoured at Yad Vashem in Israel. He's honoured here in Shepparton. That's Yorta Yorta country where he was from. His grandson is still with us, who's been an enormous pusher of this William Cooper story. He was 10 in 1938. So just add that up. He's now 95. and to travel with him to Israel and Berlin in 2017 was just remarkable. It was my role to record in video and photographs those times. But yeah, so I really enjoyed what Roz said, and I think we've all focused on the last part there to do with workshopping and toolbox things, and I think we all feel like we do need equipping. And I know Barbara and Shoshana are a vital part of creating things to put in our hands, and I think that's wonderful. That's a really good start that gets into schools, gets into different groups through the community, and they can be handed out where someone's yelling at you at a polling booth. Just give them a book about some love for fellow man, which is what William Cooper and his group stood for. So, yeah, so thank you very much, you guys.
Absolutely. So thank you, David and Carol. David's been the videographer of the William Cooper story now for a couple of decades, should I say. It's been great. So thank you, David. And John Campbell, you've got your hand up.
Thanks,
for a
David and
question.
Carol.
Yeah, thank you. Just a thought, a questionnaire that we can say a few questions we can go and ask our neighbours and bring back their thoughts and views, and maybe a little flyer to put in their hands representing some organisation. Just as for a tool thing, to get the word out there and get to talk to our neighbours in our local area. That's all.
Absolutely. That's a great idea, John. And one of the things that we've also got in progress is having a Q&A on the Israel-Palestine issue to put on the Indigenous Friends of Israel website. So that could also be turned into a flyer, as you've suggested, for people to be able to give out to people. But it would be on our website for anyone who's searching the internet looking for something like that. So thank you. Have we got time for one more question or no? Should we end? We are well and truly over time.
From Barbara and myself, we personally want to thank you.
Can I throw
Yeah,
one spanner
right.
into the works?
Okay, go ahead.
Seeing you are all still here, aren't you amazing? It's amazing you're all still here. I maybe I could throw a spanner into the works and just say that you won't have heard this expression before because it's something I thought of today. From the Indian Ocean to the Pacific Ocean, Australia will be free. Have a think about that for a moment. That's a bit jarring, isn't it? When we think about that saying that the pro-Palestinian people have from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. What they're really wanting is to have every Jew removed from Israel and the land to be taken over by Palestinians. They don't want a two-state solution. They want a one-state solution, all of it. Now, although our federal government is saying that they are trying to do a two-state solution, and they're actually, the UN is going to have a meeting in June in New York to try and enforce that two-state solution imposed by following up a resolution of the ICJ. And Australia, unfortunately, will probably be voting for it. So we've got that background happening, which is a result of the federal election campaign of Labor getting in. But when you have a look at it, why on earth has the Albanese government, the Labor government, got the kind of ideology that they have? It's really because they're a socialist party. And a socialist party doesn't believe in national sovereignty. It's a globalist type of attitude. And the Albanese government firmly believes that Australia was colonised, and it actually has very much an anti-West kind of agenda. And the accusation that the Albanese government, Albanese One government, we might say, of Israel is that it's a colonial power, it's an apartheid state, it's an illegal state, illegally occupying Palestinian land, with the Palestinians being the Indigenous people. So if you look at all of that and bring it back to Australia and you look at their policy on Indigenous affairs, really it's the same policy. And it's also the kind of ideology that the pro-Palestinian people are using to try to get the Indigenous people in Australia on side. Then we have a look at South Africa, and you saw what happened with Trump and Ramaphosa on TV recently. But look, this has been happening for a long time, where the South African government is legally backing African people going onto the farmland of white farmers and killing, torturing and raping and taking the land without compensation, because the argument is it's the ancestral land of the African people. And then you have South Africa, which is the one who took, beside the genocide they're committing there, they are the ones who took Israel to the International Court of Justice with an accusation of genocide. So putting all this together, we're in a situation where we could have, it all fits in to be able to say, well, from the Indian Ocean to the Pacific Ocean, Australia will be free of all the immigrants, of anyone who is non-Indigenous. Now, I don't think the Albanese government would be prepared to say it in those terms because I don't think that would be very appreciated by the majority of Australians. But what I'm trying to do is point to the ideology behind all of this. So how's that for a spanner in the works at the end of a long session? I don't know if anyone wants to comment on that before you all disappear and have your relaxed evening. Was that too shocking? No comments? No questions?
There's lots of comments. Just look in the chat.
I was at a mandate protest thing on the border at Tweeds whenever it was a few years ago, and there were some elders there, and anyway, they were talking about having been returned some deeds by the Archbishop and all that, blah, blah, Anyway, so I said to one of them, and they were talking about country, because we couldn't cross from New South Wales to Queensland. And he was saying, well, our country goes from, I don't know, wherever, but, it covers the whole area. So he said, we give you permission to travel our country, which means you can travel the border. Anyway, it was a very interesting conversation. And I said to him, so now that you've got your land back, are you going to kick us all out? Like us as in us white, invaders, whatever. I mean, I wasn't an invader, but anyway, he said, no, he said, if you want to live by our LORE, you're welcome to stay. And I just thought, if only somehow we could educate us white people in the LORE of the Indigenous people and bring the country back to what it was before we kind of came along and colonized and ruined it. If that, if that would set Australia free, do you know what I mean? Without having to kick us all out, but free Australia from all those people that shouldn't be here. I really liked what that he said that.
Okay, that's an interesting comment. Obviously, things have travelled so far since pre-colonial history, because we were colonised, Australia. Culture in pre-colonial times is just so different from culture today. Culture and law are the same thing, basically, LORE. But very interesting comment, and it would take a bit of time to tease all of that out. Understand your beautiful heart there. I haven't looked at the chat because I'm not very good at coping with looking at chats and talking to people and facilitating. So I leave that for Lillian, who normally does a wonderful job with that. Okay. Is that the end of it tonight, people? You've had enough? Yeah, David's nodding his head.
Thank you. Well, Alan, how are you?
Hi, lovely to see you.
I'm fine, yes. I had trouble getting on. I was on the thing and it said that you were my thing was there and I was in the waiting room and nothing happened. So I had to go out and go back in.
Apologies. We did lose a couple of people tonight for that reason. We have a different Zoom room and I'd gone onto that to check something earlier on. And I didn't realise when we started, I was still in that Zoom room instead of this one. So my apologies there.
So good to see you. So good to see you all. And from Barbara and myself, we say shalom and have a wonderful, blessed remaining evening and rest of the week. We'll stay in touch.
Thank you.
Good night.
Shalom,
Shalom.
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 Good night. Shalom.